such a big thing, Mike.
I want to turn this around and talk a little bit about Steve.
Sport is for everyone. It's the common language between all the people.
Survive the ups and downs of it if you don't have a passion. And
hello and welcome to In the Game, Qatar's first sports podcast. I'm your host Steve Mackey, and I can't wait to introduce to you some amazing individuals. The podcast is all about the story, our guest story, the highs, the lows, the laughter, the tears. We want to learn what it's like to walk in their shoes, to get an insight into what it takes to overcome those challenges and how to create what is their success story. I'm a Sterling fan. I think he does a fantastic job, and it was definitely a penalty.
Hello and welcome to In the Game, Qatar's first sports podcast. And as always, we've got a super guest. And I've got to thank you, Sheena, for coming on the show. Everybody, this is Sheena McCabe. Now, what are we going to talk about today, Sheena?
We're going to talk about Formula One, the big race that's coming here in a couple of weeks to Qatar.
Now, everybody's been saying to me, they've been saying, you've got to get somebody onto the podcast that knows about Formula One. And you know everything, right?
I know a lot. Yes, I know a lot. Yeah.
So everybody, Sheena, she is an expert when it comes to the Formula One, and there's going to be loads of. We're going to talk about a few more things in the podcast today, but which is really exciting. But thanks very much for coming on the show. You're a Formula One fan. What's it like with it coming to Qatar?
It's very exciting, actually. I mean, I've been a fan for a long time, and to think that I'm actually here when the first Formula One comes to Qatar is just great for a fan, an inaugural race, and it's just up the road as well, so it doesn't require me getting on a plane and flying around.
Have you got your tickets yet?
I have. I got my tickets within a matter of hours of them going on sale. So,
whoa.
Yeah, I was in there straight away. I'm not going to miss this.
So, and where have you been? You just touched on it slightly. Where have you been with the Grand Prix? Where have you followed?
You know, I've only ever been to Silverstone in the UK. I've never been to any of the races. Silverstone is UK. I'm from the UK, so the home race, Silverstone, is a lovely place. Great track and a lovely part of the country. So I love going there. But I haven't been anywhere else. So this is my first overseas Formula One. I always watch on the TV or on one of the apps. So,
whoa.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, I live in Biggleswade in Bedfordshire when I'm not living in Qatar, and it's not far from Silverstone, but it's also not far from Stevenage. And who comes from Stevenage?
Yes, Lewis Hamilton.
Get in there.
Yeah, I was in Stevenage while I was back in the UK a couple of months ago, I should say. And that's all everyone was talking about was Lewis Hamilton. Will he win his 8th World Championship? And if he does, that means he's beaten Michael Schumacher, who has 7. So it'll be interesting to see. But he's actually up against some very tough opposition this year.
Of course, Red Bull are snapping. Not snapping at his heels. They're
over. They've been at his heels, over his heels, and ahead of him. The best way to look at it at the moment, Max Verstappen is leading the World Championship by not many points, but he's leading, and it's been what I would describe as a fruity competition this year.
Yeah.
Because these two have been sharp elbows out, and been a few crashes between these two as well, and this is what's great about the race coming to Qatar, is that it's coming towards the end of the season. So it's race 20, and there's only 22. There's 22 this year. And after us, it's Saudi and then Abu Dhabi. So when they come to us, they will have just done Mexico this weekend. Then next weekend, they are in Brazil. So by the time they come to us, we may have the fight of a century on our hands here between Max and Lewis, because if they manage to win one apiece, it's going to be very, very exciting. And coming here on a track that F1's never been to, or any of the drivers, or any of the cars, it's certainly going to be an interesting 3 days, and well worth going to watch firsthand. If you haven't brought your ticket, I recommend you do.
Yeah. And so when did your love of Grand Prix? What kind of sports do you like? Is this your love of your life?
I like cricket.
Okay.
I like rugby, and I like Formula One.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're the three I follow. But Formula One is the love of my life, if you want. If you're going to look at sports, this is where I will invest a lot of my time to watch and make the effort. I mean, it's 3 days when you attend a race. You've got 3 days. You've got practices on the first day, then practice and qualifying on the second, and then the big race on the Sunday. So you do invest quite a bit of time. And I started watching Formula One back in the 70s with my dad. I was 7 years of age. He was watching it, sitting on the settee with his mug of tea, and I walked in, and my older brother was also watching it, and I sat down, and that was it. And I've often asked myself, what made you want to follow Formula One? I like fast cars. I like the competition. I like to see the battle for a championship. And what I like, it's that it's not just one day, it's 3 days, and there's so much involved in it. It's great for a fan to follow, and the statistics. You really throw yourself into it.
And you get into all of that statistics?
I get into it, whether I understand it, but I do understand enough to know that, this is not a case of getting into a car and driving around as fast as you can. There's a lot more to the racing than that, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. And also the requirements, the pressures and the stresses on the drivers themselves is well worth looking at as well.
Yeah. So I want to take you back, because it's and this is about kind of people's stories, but it's important. 7 years old, you're sitting with. Did women get into motorsport back then?
No,
I'm not being sexist.
No, no. Back then, no, it wasn't. It was always a very male-dominated sport. It still is a male-dominated sport, but it was as viewers, fans tended to be males, but there were women involved. They liked watching it. I just took to it. I just liked it, and I mean, like my mum. My mum always wanted to do rally driving, and so the cars is the sort of desire to drive fast, and is there. But I must admit, I do not drive fast on the roads.
Yeah.
I am very conscious of safety and speed cameras.
Yeah, and don't go through a red traffic light.
Oh yeah. Don't
cost
fall
a little bit for that one.
Don't
That's
fall.
a costly one.
Don't fall for that one either. I mean, you should be safe on the roads.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I like about motor racing is that it's on a track, or if it's a street circuit, it's controlled and it's as safe as it possibly can be, and they can drive as fast as they like. And I think that's where it belongs. It does not belong on roads.
Yeah. Now let's talk about back then when you were 7. Who was your hero back then? Because we could talk about a few, I'm sure.
I mean, I didn't actually latch on to a one driver. It was the team. I liked Mclaren. It was Mclaren Ford, and I liked them because my dad liked them. So I followed Mclaren, and I still follow Mclaren. And I've liked different drivers as I've gone through the years of supporting. But the good thing about Mclaren, it's a UK based. It was started by a New Zealander. It's been one of the powerhouses for many years, and it's slightly dipped over the last few years, but it's starting to come back. It's becoming a very strong team under the stewardship of Zach Brown, and he's bringing them back. He's bringing a very, very strong team together, and it's not just the drivers, it's what's behind that. You've got the mechanics, you've got the engineers, you've got the management, all the strategists and the marketers, and all the people in the background make this happen. The drivers get in the car, they're the ones that put the necks on the line and have to drive at those breakneck speeds, but it's all part of the team, and Zach Brown is promoting and brought together a very strong team, and I'm excited about McLaren at the moment. They're fighting for the third place in the the constructors. They won it last year.
Whoa.
This year they're fighting again, but this year Ferrari, who were quite weak last year, are much stronger this year. So there's only 3.5 points between McLaren and Ferrari this year, and they're fighting for the championship, the constructors' championship. So But I'll explain.
Yeah.
People are saying, I'm talking about championships here, and I think, what is she on about?
But what is, and this is what I want to, what is it going to be like at that weekend? Because this is going to be something brand new, coming to Qatar, the pinnacle of motorsports. Oh my word. What is it like to be at a race? What is it like with the noise and the...
Do you know, it's the noise that you like. It's the engines, the car engines, and the speed. And when you watch it on television, you don't hear that. You don't absorb that. You can turn the volume down, but you don't actually feel the noise as it resonates through the crowd and everybody cheering. And then, of course, the speed. On the television, the cameras are following them, so they don't look like they're going very fast. But when you're at the track, it's boom. Oh, it's gone past. Which one was that? Which one was? Well, that's it. And I think with the modern day engines, they do sound like a swarm of bees. And and you're trying to figure out who's in what, because all the cars are different colours, but but your favourite driver, can you find your favourite driver amongst them? Sometimes you can't. And one of the things I brought with me, I wanted to just a bit of show and tell. Right, this is helmet. This is last year's design from Daniel Ricardo, who was racing for Renault. And this is the only piece of equipment, safety equipment, that the drivers can customise. So with Daniel Ricardo, you look out for his helmet because he has one of the most exciting designs, but other drivers have their own as well. So you may see two black cars coming along, but you look at the helmet and you say, that's my driver, or that's my favourite driver, I should say. So, I mean, that's a sort of a real fangirl type thing here, but that's last year's helmet, and it is so cute and tactile.
It's really nice, and those things have come on a long way since the olden days, right?
Oh, they certainly have. I mean, helmets weren't compulsory. I think if I remember right, there may be people who will put me right, but in the 60s it wasn't compulsory, and they did wear some form of helmet, but it didn't protect them like this does. And also the seat belts that they wear, they have a six-point seat belt to keep them tied into the car. That wasn't compulsory really until the 70s, and you wouldn't be something strange to see during the 50s and 60s of the car crash and the driver be catapulted out of the cockpit. But these nowadays, they have to withstand tremendous temperatures as well, because the car, if it crashes and it's a bad crash, it could burst into flames. And last year when we were at Bahrain was the first time we've seen a really, really bad crash since young Jules, I always get his name wrong, but a young driver, 24-year-old, was killed when he drove into a vehicle that was on the track, and that's where one of the safety features, the halo, came from.
Yeah.
But we'll talk more about the helmet. When Roman Grosjean, who used to drive for Haas, this was in Bahrain.
Ball of Fire, right? Is that the one?
Yeah, and he was driving. It was only onto the third corner, and his car, I think he touched another car, and he veered off to the right and went into the barriers, and it was the metal barriers, and his car went between two of the barriers, went through, and it split in half, and it burst into flames. And the safety equipment on these drivers nowadays are so advanced that the flame-proof overalls can withstand temperatures of between 400 and 800 degrees centigrade. And these suits have come along a lot since Niki Lauda's day, because Niki Lauda, he was badly burnt in a crash, and the helmet came off when he had the impact, and that's why he had pretty bad burns to his head. And that's one of the things, is the harness, like the chin strap has to be, the whole idea is you've got to stay on your head if you have a crash.
Yeah.
So with Grosjean, he managed to get out with burns to his hands, but the rest of him was okay, and he was in there for about 14 seconds.
It seemed like longer, really.
It did seem like longer, and it was extremely scary, very graphic, because you knew the driver was in there, and the safety car, the medical car, was behind, and then the marshals are there with the fire extinguishers. And it was down to Grosjean to get himself out because nobody at that point could lean in and get him.
Yep, yep.
And his foot was trapped, so he had to come out without his boot on. But he managed it. He was. But what they have to do is remove the steering wheel, undo the seat, remove a head and neck protectors, which is at the side of the car, and then climb out, as well as keep your head.
I love the program from Netflix.
Oh yes. Drive to Survive. Oh my goodness!
Or was it Formula? I can't remember what it was, but he was one of the interviews that was on it, and in graphic detail he'll tell you about it. He'll talk, and somebody was with him helping him out that day. That's for sure. As in, some angel was pulling him out.
Well, the thing, if you're new to F1, the best thing to do this weekend is to binge watch Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
It takes you into the behind the scenes of the Formula One, and it introduces you to the drivers, because prior to this, the only thing you knew about the drivers is what was reported in the newspapers, magazines, and stuff. But since social media has caught onto it, and then the Drive to Survive, you find out everything you want to find out, the gossip.
It was brilliant. I loved it.
It's a great season. And one of the things that I think with the drivers, they have to be these incredibly fit individuals. If you think about them, they're driving over 200 miles per hour in a vehicle that has got tremendous G-forces on them, and they've got the helmet on their head, and they've got to keep their head is kept in place with this harness called the hands, which is head and neck. And what it does, it stops the head from, if they have an impact, it stops the head from bouncing to the left and right or forwards or back, which prevents quite a lot of serious injuries and deaths that have happened previously. Because what happened is you're moving at tremendous speed and your body is thrown forward, your head is going to be pulled forward as well, and it actually separates from your spine. And it did kill, it was a NASCAR driver, Dale Earnhardt. And this is where the hands came from. He had what would be described as quite a gentle bump, but it threw his head to the right and the left, and he was killed instantly. So they have this harness, which you'll see them, if you come to the race, you'll see them walking around, and it's over the shoulders, and then it's attached to the back of the helmet, just at the back here. Yeah. And the whole idea is to stabilise their head and the neck. And so they have to, that keeps them, stopping them from it, but they still need to hold their head up. And one of the things next week, you're talking to, you're talking to one of the guys, a guy called Michael Italiano, who is Daniel Ricardo's performance coach, and he will explain what exactly how he prepares Daniel to race for the beginning of the season, and then how he keeps them fit during the season, how he keeps them mentally balanced, because the pressure's on these guys. If they win, it's great. If they're not winning, it isn't great. And how they keep them, and how he keeps them motivated. And also, I'm going to plug him, because Michael is also, he runs his own business as a coach, and he's my coach as well. And I, he's been coaching me for a good year, and very good. And he's going to be on your show.
Yeah, he is going to be on the show. And just make sure that you watch this one as well, because it's Ricardo's coach, right?
Yeah.
Daniel's coach. And it's going to be like touching distance. I know it's not Daniel, obviously, but there's going to be some really good shares that he's going to give us.
Well, that is it. And one of the things that when you watch Netflix Drive to Survive, you get to know the drivers and what the drivers, how they prepare themselves for races. And one of the things that I would love to know about the Qatar Grand Prix is, how are the drivers going to prepare themselves to race on a track no one has ever raced on before for Formula One? And that is a big question I would love to ask one of the drivers. But I'm sure somebody will ask them at the time of the track.
I'm sure, and I'm kind of, because I'm fascinated by it all. I think it's going to be really good. It's going to be great. I can imagine myself being there on the start and finish line, and they're all lining up. What's that feeling like when they're all getting ready to go in the cars?
Well, that is it. You're sitting there as a fan, and you're overlooking the grid, and you see all the cars. And for those of you who don't know, there's 20 cars on the track. There's actually 10 teams, which are 2 drivers per team. So the 20 cars on the track, and the positions on the track are decided during the qualifying, which happens the day before. And they get into the cars. They have to psych themselves up and prepare themselves to race, and then the engines are on. You see all the mechanics and everybody running off the grid because they're going to start the race, and the lights go down, countdown, and they're off, and you hear the engines roar. It is the most exhilarating thing that you can feel and see, and they're off. And that's it. They're racing for the first corner, and that's always the interesting part of the race: is who's going to be in the front after the first corner, and who's not, and is everyone going to get through okay? Because if you're going to see a crash, that tends to happen on the first corner.
Yeah, and then you've got a tactical race through. It's like the pit stops, or if there's there's not going to be.
Yes.
Well, you never know, but I doubt there'll be any rain, so it's going to be a straightforward. But as you said, there's nobody knows how the tires are going to hold up on here. Or
well, one of the if you're coming to the race, or if you're not coming to the race and you're going to watch all 3 days, because day 1, which will be the Friday, they have practice 1 and 2. And people may ask, well, why do they need to practice? Don't they know how to drive the cars? I mean, but the practice isn't about learning how to drive a car. It's about making sure, 1, the car's working okay, and 2, that the driver's setup in the car is right, and the driver gets themselves back into the right frame of mind and psych themselves up. And for here in Qatar, the first 2 practices is going to tell us which team is suited to this track, which car, because this is going to be the first time they've driven on it, and it's definitely going to be interesting.
So can you elaborate on what you've just said there with the cars? What is the Red Bull? What kind of track is that suited? Because they're doing quite well.
Well,
right?
they are, and funnily enough, the next 2 tracks that they're racing on is suited to the Red Bull. Yeah, I know. So it'll be interesting to see if Max Verstappen can keep his head and actually get ahead of Lewis Hamilton and beat him. Because if he does that, then there's only going to be 2 races left. And I mean, who knows?
It's exciting. Isn't
It is exciting.
It is exciting.
It is exciting. And all the drivers, I mean, they start the season off wanting to be the world champion, but only one driver can win it. And for the last 7 years, it's been Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. And that car's been tremendous. And I mean, not taking any of the responsibility of Lewis is, he has a lot of skill and a lot of talent, and he is a very good driver. And if you've got a good car and a good driver, you're on for a good season. And for a fan, for me, I'm a Mclaren fan, and I thought, oh, not again, not Mercedes. And last year, we were seeing the Mercedes. It was either Hamilton, Verstappen, and Bottas, or it was Verstappen, Hamilton, and Bottas. And that's what most of the races were, because there's three podiums. So every race, you have your first, second, and third, and all the drivers want to get on a podium. And last year, it was great to see other teams getting on the podium. So Renault got on the podium, McLaren got on the podium, and Toro Rosso got on the podium as well. And it's good to see that. And this year, it's really good to see the shake-up in the championship.
Yeah, I've enjoyed. I've got to be honest. I've enjoyed it, and I'm so looking forward. And I know this sounds. I'm so pleased with Qatar getting the opportunity of bringing them here.
Well, this is it. When the reason why Qatar managed to get here this year is because of COVID. I mean, last year COVID hit the world and the pandemic was declared in March,
yeah.
And that put an end to the F1 season until about July, and then they squeezed in 17 races between I think it was July, or at least the end of July to December. And this year, of course, last year they set up the calendar for this year, and Australia would have been on the race that weekend that Qatar has, but they're still got very strict COVID restrictions there, so they cancelled it, and so a gap came up. And Qatar has the track, the Losail track, which is FIA approved for the MotoGP. So why not? I mean, they're going to be in the Middle East, going to Saudi and then Abu Dhabi. So Qatar was able to secure F1 this time. And then they have a 10-year contract with F1.
2023, right?
2023, yeah.
That's got to tell you that the track's quite good here.
Well, I have never been to the track, so I know they have to make modifications because it was designed for motorbikes, and for F1 they have very strict safety rules, and so they'll have to make some modification.
Yeah.
And plus the crowd fans are slightly bigger. Not the fans are physically bigger, but the numbers are bigger, so they're having to increase the capacity there. So there's quite a bit of work going on.
Who do you think is going to be a big hit here?
I honestly don't know. I mean, if you look at the drivers, Ricardo's my favourite driver. Okay, Daniel Ricardo. He's a very positive, lively, goofy guy.
He's always seeming to having fun, right?
Well, yeah, he knows how to have fun, and he also knows how to live life. I don't want to be saying too much here because his coach is going to be listening.
Yeah, but
he's a very positive guy, and one of the things that I like about him is that no matter how bad things get, he finds a way to get round it, get over whatever the bad times are, and improve. And he joined Mclaren this year, and he's really had a tough first part of the season. He was having difficulty adapting to the car and had to change his driving style.
Yeah.
But despite that, every time he finishes the race, he always looked for the positives. And I like that. And I think everybody should do that. And now,
I'm going to ask his coach. You know, one of the questions that I'm going to ask his coach is, did Netflix do him any favours? Because at the end of it, when he was going from one garage to Renault, I think it was, and the Renault I can't remember the garage that he was in. I think he was in Renault, right?
Renault, yeah.
But he was going to go to which other one, and he was leaving at the end of the season. And I thought, oh, that's not nice. That's not. But he is a lovely guy. It seems like a fun every minute with him. He's always playing pranks on people or just joking with them. Yeah. It seems he seems a really nice guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things about the Netflix series. It introduced you to the drivers.
Yeah.
And you got to see their personalities, and some of them did stand out really well, and that was, of course, Daniel. And you have George Russell from Williams, and he's now moving up to Mercedes in the new year, and he's got an exciting time ahead of him, and he's somebody to watch. Definitely, George. He's called Gentleman George or Gorgeous George.
Right.
And he's well worth watching. Another driver that certainly cemented himself this year as a contender for future world titles, and that's Landon Norris from McLaren as well. He's another British driver.
Lando.
Yeah.
His father's a big guy, right? Is he the one that owns one of the racing?
No,
I've got the wrong one.
No, you got the wrong one there. No, Lando, he's into his third year at McLaren.
Okay.
And he's found his feet this year, and he's done really well. And he's partnered now with Daniel Ricardo, so that's a really strong team for McLaren. And when they came back from the summer season, they won the Italian Grand Prix, and they got what's called a 1-2. So there was Daniel first, Lando second, which is a fantastic score. And I think it's something like the 9 years since McLaren have won a race, and so they're taking McLaren where it rightfully should be, which is a championship team. So I'm very happy.
Yeah, Daniel Ricardo is like your favourite driver. I must admit, in my life, I've gone through a few. So Nigel Mansell.
Oh yeah, Nigel Mansell.
James Hunt,
and then your Niki Lauda. I liked Niki Lauda. I thought he was an absolutely fantastic driver, and what he went through when he was badly injured in that crash, and still came back 40 days or 40 weeks later, and to race, and he came fourth. and a very strong, mentally strong, physically strong, and very nice guy, and great world champion. And then of course James Hunt. Everybody, I mean, you talk about Formula One, and everybody say, "Oh yeah, James Hunt," and then there's the movie Rush.
Oh,
Yeah,
I've
never seen it.
Oh,
I don't think I'll watch it.
I didn't like it, but
No.
I'd say I didn't like it. I didn't like the thought of it. Like you, I haven't watched it yet. But then I watched it and I thought, yeah, James Hunt, he epitomised what you thought of a racing driver.
Oh yeah, you look at the pictures back then, they're sitting there drinking and smoking at the track, and you wouldn't see the drivers doing that nowadays because they're so physically fit and they drive faster now, and the cars are more technical, and they have to, not only do they drive at breakneck speeds, they have to think ahead as well, and they're in constant contact with their engineer in the garage, and if you listen to the I was going to say a podcast, but if you listen to the recordings between the driver and the engineer, which there is available on YouTube, you realise how technical it is to drive these cars. They're like mobile computers. And I think the funniest one I remember hearing was when one of the drivers said, "It's my car, I'm losing power," and the engineer said, "Stand by while I reboot." And I just thought, he's rebooting his car while he's driving at 200 miles per hour. I thought, it is. So it is very technical nowadays, and it's certainly evolved, from a stick shift to now such a computerized approach.
I find it staggering when it's in rainy conditions. I think that is just... They can't see.
They can't see, no, because they don't have windscreen wipers, and I think I can't even remember which race it was now this year, and the rain. I think it was Turkey. It might have been Turkey. The rain just came down, and of course the driver in the front has the best view. Everybody else behind has the spray.
Yeah.
And it's zero visibility, and despite that, they're still driving in it until it's stopped by the stewards. So these guys, they have. It's high risk, high reward, and they are daredevils, the best way to look at it.
But this is where, because we sometimes say, "Oh, I wouldn't want to be a pilot. I wouldn't want to land the plane," and then the people say, "Well, that's their job. That's what they do. They just land it. They've got all the instruments. They can land it." But I wouldn't want to be. I got to say, I wouldn't want to be a Grand Prix driver because of just for that kind of if it's raining, you can't. If there's spray coming up and you're trying to overtake, you can't see nothing. You can't. It's just got to be on blind belief. And those practice days when they're picking their points for braking.
Yes, yeah.
How they can keep their mind on those points and then on the gadgets. And then somebody talking in their ear.
It is. I mean, It is amazing. It's an amazing sport. The reactions that these guys and I got to say, there's ladies in racing, and there's going to be women in F1 eventually, and they all have to have these amazing reactions because everything's split second, and I guess they've been doing this for so long because they all start out in karting, and so they're used to having to think ahead. Brake late, and there's only one driver that does that nowadays, and that's Daniel Ricardo. I keep going on about this guy. Yes.
I can see he's your favourite.
He is. But he's a very good driver. He's a great late braker. He's an exciting overtaker. And what I liked when he was in his Red Bull days, the duel between him and Max Verstappen, because there was no love lost between them on the track, and they went hell for leather. And the last race that we had in Austin, Mclaren did well. They got 5th and 8th, and Ricardo got 5th, but he defends very well, and he's very, very clever with that. And you've got the racecraft that all of the drivers have, is they are strategizing whilst they're driving. Their team is strategizing them, letting them know who's behind you, who's ahead of you, what setup you need, whether to come in and change your tyres, whether to keep on going. Let's see how long we can go before we need to get your tyres. And then the pit stops. if you're ahead, or you're racing, you're ahead, and you go in for a pit stop, you lose your position. So they have to be so careful on the timings of that pit stop to make sure that you still come out ahead, or at least within striking distance of that original position you were in. And so we talk about the drivers, but the guys and girls in the garages who come up with the strategy and they have to think on their feet. When things don't go according to plan, they have to come out with plan A, plan B, plan C. And it's great to see that. And you see that on Drive to Survive. And then if you follow F1 apps and also the social media, there's some very good sites on groups to join on in Facebook that they commentate as the race is happening. And you get to know what's happening in the garage. You get to know what the principals' decisions are and the timings on the pit stops. They actually have a DHL list of every race who had the fastest pit stop, and you see them working as teams.
I love teams.
And they come, and the car comes in. They're ready with the tyres, and they're in there now. And within a matter of seconds, that car's back on the road.
Do you know what? I put my hand up because I just try to imagine what it's like for somebody that's messed up. You know, when that car, and it could have been the winner of the race.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going home, and nobody's going to want to talk to them. Nobody's going to kind of. It's like.
Well, it's one of the things with when you watch Drive to Survive, you get to see the pit crews. And it puts faces to these guys and girls who are doing this tremendous job. And I always remember one. I think it was the first season. Haas, the team Haas, they had a really bad race. They started out really well, and then the first car came in for a tyre change. And the car had gone out, and one of the guys owned up to thinking he hadn't put the tyre on tight enough. Oh. And he hadn't. And he had to cancel. What they call did not finish a DNF car. Then the second car had the same problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one of the most important things is that nobody got the blame. The guy knew he'd made a mistake. He said, "Okay, let's look at how we prevent it." Because you can spend a lot of time blaming people. That gets you nowhere. And they're constantly looking ahead and they're saying, how do we prevent it? Yeah. How do we? And that's what I liked about that, is this poor guy. He must have felt terrible.
Oh, unbelievable.
But it is all.
I've got a couple more questions for you. Okay? So, if they all had the same car, same spec, same everything, who would be the world champion?
Oh, that would be interesting, because it's one of the questions that everybody keeps asking. Why don't they make the cars the same? And they put a cap on the budgets now, and that next year there's a new car. They're all going to have new cars, and there's a limit on how much they can spend. So the racing's going to be a lot closer. So I'm expecting to see the likes of Ferrari, Mclaren, and Red Bull and Mercedes mixing it at the top. And what comes down to who can win is, of course, experience, talent, good racecraft, and good team strategy. Because the driver can be the best driver in the world, but if the team isn't there behind them, or it just is not going to happen. So who do I think is? I think it's those four teams I've mentioned, and any of those drivers in those four teams. If I rank them, you've got. I couldn't rank them. I put the front. You'd have either it's going to be Verstappen, Ricardo. Who else have we got? Verstappen, Ricardo, and
where's Hamilton?
I said Hamilton, didn't I?
No.
Oh, I didn't. That's the guy. Yeah, Hamilton. Yeah, because Hamilton. Yeah, Hamilton. Those because they have been in. The two of them have been in the sport for well over 10 years. Great racecraft. Max Verstappen. He's an exciting driver. He's fast and he takes great risks. So he kind of shakes it up. So those. Then you're looking at George Russell will be joining Mercedes in the new year. So it'll be George Russell. So there's George Russell, Landon Norris, and then Perez from Red Bull, and he's another year. So it is. I honestly said you got a front row and then you got a second row, and I'm sure I've missed a driver off.
You have. And where's your driver?
He's at the front. I did.
Is it?
I said at the front. I said Verstappen, Ricardo, Hamilton.
Yeah, you did.
I did, and I honestly, I would love to see, I'd love to see Ricardo get his world championship before he retires.
Do you think he's got it in him?
He's got it in him, whether the car has. That's the question. That's the question.
And it's kind of, they put their bodies through. They have got a nice lifestyle, but they put their bodies through. They've got to. They
have to, and it's one of the things that Michael will tell you next week, and how strict the diet has to be, because the cars on the drivers are weighed at the end of the race, and they mustn't be under the weight. They all have to be at a certain weight, and this hadn't always been the case, because previously you could have a small driver who's very light, and then the other team has a tall driver who, obviously taller means he's heavier, and so you wouldn't have the fairness. So the small driver in a lighter car tended to win. And then they changed it to say that the cars all have to be the same weight, and that includes the car and the driver. And if it's light, they put weights in the car.
Wow.
So it is now come to a case of they have to keep themselves fit. But what was happening with the taller drivers, they had to lose more weight, which then impacted on their performance, because they didn't have enough calories, didn't have the energy. But now it doesn't matter, because every car is the same. But they still have to fit in that cockpit. And those cockpits are quite narrow. So these guys are, I would not say there's an ounce of fat on any of them. They are very muscular and lean. And they have to have good cardio. They need to have very strong necks because of the G-force, as we mentioned. And the position in which they're sitting, they have to have very long, very strong legs and glutes, because their legs are not like we're sitting in the car. Their legs are out in front of them. And they have to drive. They're driving for 2 hours at those breakneck speeds. So there's the fitness, the physical fitness, the core, and then there's the mental fitness, because they need to keep focused, and they got to keep their heads. And it's something that.
Okay, tell everybody why they should be at the Grand Prix in Qatar.
You should be at the Grand Prix because it's history. It's the first time in Qatar. You get to see all these, the pinnacle of the sport. You've got 20 drivers, 10 cars, all coming here to win the race on a track they've never raced before. So it's going to be exciting. And then there'll be lots of activities going on during the days as well. And you'll get to meet other F1 fans and have a good time. And
you're going to have some super drivers they're all going to be here.
They are all the time. You know, you're talking about, there's only 20 F1 drivers in the world at any one time. And so these guys are at the top of their sport. We can talk about why, but they are at the top of the sport, and they're coming here.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today. Two things. Can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing these kind of insights into the Grand Prix. The second thing is next week's guest is going to be Michael Italiano, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And he's the performance coach for Daniel Ricardo, which we're cheering for you, Daniel. Come on, bring it on, bring it home for this lady. Please, please, please bring it home for this lady. Everybody, thank you very much for listening today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Come on, let's have the Grand Prix. We're ready and waiting.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so
much. Thanks so much indeed.
Thank you. Bye now.
Everyone, thank you for listening. Please send us your feedback on Facebook, Instagram or Twitter. And don't forget to review us on your favourite podcast app.